So when you first start off practicing PDR, one of the common questions is how hard should I push? So using a standard double bend bar like this with a soft tip and a T-handle, we're going to set up through our S-hook and O-ring on a bonnet panel, just like we do in our basic skills training course. And I'm going to run through a couple of examples looking at the reflections in the line board to give you a better understanding as to what it is you're looking for and determining how hard you should be pushing. So let's have a quick look. So using an S-hook and an O-ring and attaching it to the inside of a bonnet panel, I'm going to use this double bend bar, thread it through the O-ring, work ourselves into our open area of the panel, and then with this end, through this anchor point, begin applying some pressure. Now we'll take a look on the top side and see exactly what that looks like. So right now I've got my double bend bar going through the S-hook and O-ring, and I'm just going to start applying some pressure, and just here in the reflection you can see as those lines start pinching together. So this shows you where the tip of my tool is. If I start to drag that forwards towards me and further away from me, you can see the distortion in the reflected lines, and it gives you a very good idea as to how to identify the tip of your tool. Now when it comes to applying enough pressure, you'll see that I can press down with the handle, create what appears to be a high spot. But as soon as I release the pressure, it disappears. So I've pressed it hard enough to move the metal, but not hard enough for it to stay. So I quite often refer to this as a bouncing technique, and it's a great way to identify the tip of your tool. But when it comes to applying enough pressure to move the metal, that's when we press down a bit harder. And at this point, it looks like I've pulled up too high. But as soon as I release that pressure, you'll see the panel and all of those lines have gone back straight, reading true again. Now if I really press down hard, now at this point it looks like it's far too high, but it's under pressure. Again, once I release that pressure, we should now see a small high spot. So now I have no pressure with the handle at all. I've released the tool from the inside of the bonnet, but just here you can see that we've left a high spot. So often people are surprised by how much pressure is needed to start moving the metal enough to make it stick. But when it comes to how much pressure to use, we also have to consider the leverage. So in this scenario, I'm using an S-hook and O-ring. That's my anchor point. And at different point, whether I've got my bar further into that S-hook and ring or further out, will change that leverage point. And again, that changes how much pressure we need to create a high spot. So next time you've got your practice panel out, do have a little play around. There's a couple of things you can try. The first is to swap around on the tips. If you use a wide, broad, kind of like a soft tip, you'll find you usually need a lot more force, a lot more pressure to create a small high, compared to if you were using like a fine tip, something like a bullet style tip. That you'll use less force to create that same high spot. So that's the first thing to try to play around with, is the different tips. The other is that anchorage. So I was using an S-hook and O-ring for my kind of leverage point. And ideally you want to find that sweet spot bang in the middle. So if you can have your kind of anchor right in the middle, your handle one side, your tip the other side, right in the middle, you're going to find that really nice sweet spot. It's not always possible, so you do have to have a play around depending on the damage that you're working on. But at least for you beginners out there, it gives you a couple of things to try to practice finding the tip of your tool, which is very important in PDR, but also playing around with how much pressure you need to create a small high spot in a panel. And just as you saw there, you get a bonus practice in tapping down your high spots. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video. As always, don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you have, and you can subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next one.